Streaming from Oklahoma's own digital studio, this is Beyond the Bell, brought to you by the Oklahoma Education Impact Initiative.
You are listening to Beyond the Bell. Few issues spark more debate in Oklahoma than education, and with good reason. It affects all of us, and that is why we are digging deep into the stories, challenges, and opportunities shaping our schools. We have partnered with Oklahoma Education Impact Initiative to bring you these conversations every month. Their mission is simple: move the needle. Right now, Oklahoma ranks 50th in the nation for public education, and they say that is not acceptable. They believe the first step to change is understanding why a strong education matters, and that is where we begin today with a conversation featuring two of the top experts in the field. We have Dr. Kathy Curry and Dr. Dan Hamlin. They both have a deep understanding of education in Oklahoma. And they are two of the most respected voices in education, leaders whose research, teaching, and service have shaped both policy and practice in our state and beyond. So I'm going to introduce them real quick. I'm so happy that y'all are both here today. I want to really set the groundwork on today's conversation. So Dr. Kathy Curry is a professor and the Williams Chair in Higher Education at Oklahoma State University, where she leads the Educational Leadership and Policy Studies program. Her research has been published in the field's top journals. She's been recognized for her contributions here in Oklahoma and internationally. In 2023, she served as Oklahoma's Secretary of Education, and she is now leading groundbreaking work on how to utilize artificial intelligence into our schools. Dr. Curry, welcome today.
Thank you.
And Dr. Dan Hamlin, he is a presidential professor at the University of Oklahoma and founding director of the Oklahoma Center for Education Policy. He also serves as editor-in-chief of the Oklahoma Education Journal and is a research affiliate with Harvard University. His work, spanning over 50 peer-reviewed studies, has been published in leading academic journals, featured in national outlets like NBC, NPR, and the Wall Street Journal. No big deal. Dr. Dan Hamlin, thank you so much for being here today. Welcome. So today's conversation, it centers on answering the question, why does education matter? There are 4 areas that will help us answer that question, and we're going to go into a little bit of each of those. And Dr. Hamlin, you helped us break that down into the 4 areas. They include individual success, economic competitiveness, civic engagement, and health outcomes. So let's start with individual success. How does a high-quality education shape long-term opportunities for students? When you put it on its head, we know that education does affect outcomes and for each individual, but how does the high-quality education really shape long-term opportunities?
Yeah, I think you're right. Most people know that there's a pretty strong link between educational performance and an individual's long-term life success, let's say. But if we're just to look at basic statistics from the U.S. Bureau of Labor, what you'll see is there's a very tight link between different levels of educational attainment, educational performance, and labor market outcomes. So think about your income or your employment level. There's a very tight link between your level of income and the level of education that you have. So we've seen that now for decades, and I think most people have a pretty good sense of that. But I think if we take a step back and say, well, why are we even talking about this then? Well, I think one of the concerns right now for Oklahoma is if we look at reading and writing ability for our students in the K through 12 system, 36% of kids are proficient. If we look at math ability, about 20%, so 1 in 5 kids are even proficient. And I think what's also equally concerning, but maybe doesn't get as much attention, is the percentage of students who are advanced. So think about the kids who are going to end up being our inventors, our innovators, our job creators. I think somewhere between 7 and 10% are considered advanced in reading and writing and math. So very small percentage. So I think this is a concern. This is one of the reasons why I think there's a lot of people in the state right now trying to think about how can we kind of move the needle, how can we push things forward.
Right. Dr. Curry, I'd love to have your perspective on it. You just heard those numbers on both ends of the spectrum. Sure. On one side, we're not having enough performance. It's quite low. And then for our high performers, we don't have enough of them.
Right.
What's your perspective on How do we change that? How did we get there?
Well, I think we have to look at education a little bit differently. We right now, education is really set up for an industrial revolution model where we're producing similar outcomes and doing quite a bit of standardization in education. And as Dr. Hamlin was suggesting, even our top performers we're not discovering those specific skills and abilities of our top performers. So I think you have to ask, what skills are needed for 21st century success? And I think we need to rethink education in a way that we emphasize innovation, creativity, where we capture what a student is passionate about, interested in. One of the primary challenges, I think, in education today is a lack of student engagement, because it's difficult to be passionate about standardized assessments when that's the measure of performance. I'm not saying we have to do away with accountability, not that at all, but I do think there are some creative ways where we can tap into individual skills, abilities, interests, passions that connect students to education in a much more meaningful way than what we're doing right now.
I love the way that you said that. The student that we have today in 2025 is not the same student that we even saw 5 years ago.
No.
It's a much different world than what some of these education models have been built for, even as far as assessment goes. You brought up an industry, and what are the things trying to capture a student, what they're passionate about, what that might look like for their future. Right. When it comes to education and creating people that can be productive in theory, and we would love for them to stay in Oklahoma, but
Sure.
produce people that are successful, how do you model policy around that to know what we need in our economy?
Well, I think you're correct. Students that are completing education today are looking at a global marketplace. They're not just looking at Oklahoma. And so we have to expand our way of thinking about the skills and abilities that our students need. Students need to be set up as lifelong learners. If you think about the influence of technology and how rapidly technology is changing, even students who are at high capacity right now are going to need reskilling and upskilling in the future just to stay ahead of some of the changes that are going on. And so preparing students for a broader world than just the state of Oklahoma and giving them those skills, there are some needed skills such as discernment, critical thinking, problem solving. How do I know if this information, students have access to more information now than they've ever had. So is that information, can I trust it? Is it reliable? What can I do with it? So I think we need a new mindset in education, which is what we are all about, is rethinking what is possible in education to raise the level of professionalization of teachers so that they're respected and trusted as professionals, giving them the kind of training that they need to be truly professionals in their field, and then also connecting students to their passions so that students are engaged. You have a young child. You know how curious your child is. We're born with this innate desire to learn and to grow. Education's not designed to foster that curiosity. So we need to rethink. We need to think about how to connect students to their giftedness, their passions, how they can demonstrate competency, and then turn them into lifelong learners, because we can't expect in this current educational climate to learn all that we need to know and then be done. We're going to have to be lifelong learners.
And really set our students up for that. Dan, your wheelhouse is policy. You look at where we are right now, where we could see improvements, and work to come up with a solution, or this might be a good solution for problem A, problem B. How does what you do fit into what our current needs are here in Oklahoma?
Well, I do a range of work, a range of research on various topics related to education policy. So I look at teachers, families, family engagement, school choice, career and technical education. So a lot of the big bucket policy issues that are part of discussions about the education system and how to design it to optimize outcomes for kids and for the state. And so I think, getting back to your point about, well, where do we go? How do we design the system? I think Kathy's point is a good one, that our students they're not just competing with other kids in Oklahoma. They're not even just competing with kids nationally. They're competing with it's globally competitive now for our students. And I think that we have a lot of families that maybe understand that, but maybe I think a lot of folks out there who maybe haven't adapted to this new highly competitive environment that we're in, and are really thinking intentionally about developing the importance of developing the human capital in our kids early on as they progress through the K-12 education system. The other thing I would note is that you asked about the state and the economic competitiveness of the state, and how do we design the system so that we can ensure some level of economic prosperity for Oklahoma. And I think when we think about the education system in serving that need, there are our existing industries. So if you think about if you think about manufacturing, and you think about the aerospace sector, and some of these big sectors that are part of the Oklahoma economy, well, there is a need for highly skilled labor to take up jobs in those sectors, and that is a sort of routine and consistent thing. But then another part of it, I think that maybe we don't think enough about, is the sectors that could exist but don't exist now, the investment that we could be attracting to create new jobs and new types of opportunities in our state. So a good example, I think, is the case of Tesla a couple of years ago. They were thinking about setting up a $1 billion factory in the Tulsa area. And I think Oklahoma, we made a really strong bid for that. We have a business-friendly environment. We put some good incentives forward. But ultimately, we lost out to Austin, which has a much more highly skilled workforce that's available to Tesla there. And I think that was a big part of that decision. So I think if we can start to increase our ability to produce a highly skilled workforce, we're going to see some of those investments in other sectors that we can't even imagine right now.
Sure. Well, and I think that's the thing that people may not realize, is that it all starts with education and the workforce, the future workforce that we are training, that's currently sitting in a classroom right now. What's the role of education in rapidly changing economy? I mean, you just used the example of Tesla. How do we identify those future areas of need, and how can we train our students to be competitive in those areas? How do you do that? And I know AI, Dr. Curry, that's one of your wheelhouses as well.
Yes. I think you're right in asking the question. We don't know what kind of jobs our students are going to be filling in the future, because things are changing so rapidly. So instilling the kind of skills and abilities that allow them to adapt and to change, to make informed decisions, and the ability to access information and to continue to grow, I think those are absolutely essential. I think you're right. I think AI is here to stay. And as educators, my passion has been, we need to get in front of it. We need to understand how to use AI, utilize AI in a way that enhances education rather than replaces it, because that's a huge fear of educators. I think even the workforce is afraid of being replaced by AI. I heard a conversation recently about the use of AI, and there were two kinds of challenges that were presented. And it is really wise to know what AI can do and what it can't do. And so right now, of course, it's evolving, but right now, if you have, let's say, a complicated problem, a problem that needs quite a bit of information in order to solve it, AI is an excellent source. Your large language models are going to pull from all those sources and provide the information you need. On the other flip side is the idea of a complex problem, a problem that doesn't have an answer that is readily apparent. So something that might need an ethical perspective or innovative perspective. Those are the kinds of things AI cannot do. And Dan is absolutely right. Human capital is what we need. We need to build those skills in through education so that our students bring that human capital to the workforce so that they can address some of these challenges and implement this changing technology in a way that really makes sense.
Sure, well, and give us a seat at the table because we most certainly deserve to be there. Let's talk about civic engagement and social prosperity. How might education prepare students to be informed, active citizens in Oklahoma? Whoever wants to jump in.
Yeah, and I just taking a step back on Kathy's point, because I find myself, we're friends, and even though she's at Oklahoma State University, we're good friends, but I often find myself agreeing with her because of that. And I would just reiterate that point that in an AI-driven economy where people are saying, okay, it's very uncertain what the future job market is going to look like. Well, what is going to make you more nimble and able to adapt to that future and uncertain job market? Well, if you have strong academic skills, you're going to be in a position to be able to pivot when you need to be able to pursue new sectors of the economy that we don't even know about yet. So I think that is, really needs to be reiterated. And, I think also there's, as Kathy mentioned, we need to kind of think about how to configure the opportunities that we present to students within the K-12 system. So an example of that right now, we have one thing we do pretty well in Oklahoma is we have a very well-developed career and technical education system.
Absolutely.
And I think right now we're in the process of thinking through what does that look like in an AI-driven economy? And so redeveloping that sector to train students for high skills trades as well as a university track. So we may have students who are very well suited to a typical university track and other students who pursue high skills trades. But I would say this, whether you're pursuing a high skill trade or you're doing a typical four-year university track, those students are going to need a strong baseline, especially K through 8, and they're going to have strong academic skills to pursue either of those tracks. So I think that's really important.
Well, listening to both of you, the phrase "knowledge is power" keeps coming to mind. The more you know, the more power that you have to make decisions, not just for yourself, for your family, what you want to do with your future. Why is that important to be engaged in where you live and in our state? Education kind of is like the compass in that. Why is that important to have that kind of knowledge?
Yeah, well, I think at a very baseline level, in order for the children right now who are in the education system to be effective participants in our democratic republic, education is essential for that. It's one of the reasons why the education system was initially set up, was for that purpose. In part was to help train students to be citizens, responsible citizens in a democratic republic. So that's an important part. And then also to understand our free market capitalist society, how do you navigate that? And there's a lot of research evidence that suggests that education does end up playing an important role in allowing people to be informed and civically engaged and to participate in their communities and states and even in the country as a whole. So very important, and a ton of evidence actually to back that up.
So I think the thing I would add to that too, I agree 100% with Dan. Public discourse is absolutely essential, and able to have the capacity and the efficacy to engage in public discourse. I mean, you're going to gain those skills through a strong education system, whether it's the ability for self-reflection and understanding yourself and how you fit, or things like even resilience, or the kind of skills that allow you to listen respectfully, to think critically, to engage civilly, and then to look for commonalities and solutions to problems. I think we're behind in those areas. Those are the kind of skills our students need in our just in the current context, social context. I also think, adding to what Dan said too, if you look at education as a system in the state of Oklahoma, we have some extremely gifted educators in our state, passionate, committed. One of the things that we can do as a system, I think we need to work together more closely. And we tend to operate somewhat in silos. It's just that it's not anybody's fault, but it's just the way this system is set up. So bringing career tech, higher education, industry, all of those leaders together to create opportunities and pathways, I think is absolutely essential. And we do have one of the strongest career tech systems in the nation. We need to be very proud of that and expand those opportunities. But thinking about things like apprenticeships where students could actually, while they're in high school, earn money and learn a trade, learn a skill, and they graduate with those abilities and even some money in their pocket to be able, if they want to go on to higher education or if they want to pursue a trade. Those are some things we need to think very creatively about, putting the students' interest first and working together, I think.
So how do we do that? Where we are now is not cutting it.
You're right.
How do we get there?
Well, here's what I would say. I think that's a big conversation, and
Yes.
we need about 2 more hours of your time to
Right.
We
dig
do.
into it. But here's what I would say is that if we look at the individual child and what are the inputs that are going to affect that individual child's academic outcomes in school and beyond, what we can think of is there's really kind of 2 big sources. Now, there are many sources, but there's 2 really big ones. One are the home-based inputs. So what are families doing at home to cultivate learning, have conversations about education, holding high expectations for performance, emphasizing education in the home? So you have your home-based, your family input. And then we have the school. And by far and away, Kathy alluded to this already, by far and away, the most important school-based input for children's academic success and beyond is, and this has been shown in many studies, is the classroom teacher. So a high-quality classroom teacher makes the difference. And a lot of the other school-based inputs, while they may be valuable in certain ways, sort of pale in comparison to what the classroom teacher is doing on a daily basis. So you've got your family input and you've got your classroom teacher. And I think policies that focus on those 2 areas and try to supercharge capacity in those 2 areas are going to have the strongest effects on children's outcomes.
We have some wonderful teachers. I know people turn on the news all the time and we talk a lot about the challenges and how the system could be better. There's, of course, room for improvement there. And we oftentimes leave out the good work that is being done. And it's not to say there isn't good work happening in our classes. There absolutely is. You'll find some of the most passionate, hardworking people in our classrooms who are loving on all of our children. That is huge. But how do we recruit more of that? We have a teacher shortage. That's not unique to Oklahoma. How do we attract those high quality teachers? I'm sure that's something that you'll look at too.
We've actually been talking quite a bit about that in some work that we're doing together. And the idea of teacher recruitment and retention is at the top of our list. And so personally, I feel like we need to create a workspace for teachers that recognizes them as professionals. And we need to look at the things that we're currently doing that discourage teachers, that cause burnout, stress, because the research does show that teachers, eventually they don't leave because of, they enter the profession because they are passionate about children, typically. And they leave because of workplace conditions that don't support their ability to really meet the needs of children. So what can we do? I think one of the things is awareness, bringing the conversation to the table and treating Oklahoma like a system and having the conversation across agencies and across leaders about how do we make this system better and what can we do, especially with K-12, to attract and retain high quality teachers. Right now, we're not doing a good job in either of those buckets. So attracting teachers, and we need teachers who are trained very, very well for the classroom. One of the things that we've done to meet the needs in Oklahoma is emergency certification. So what we find, the evidence suggests that teachers that step into those roles with emergency certifications, they often burn out very quickly. And then we rely on our classroom teachers, their peers, to help support their success, which adds to the workload and the stress of our existing teachers. So what can we do to take some of those things away that are stressful and create a working environment that is conducive to what teachers love to do, and that's teach? We've got some ideas. We're developing some of those ideas. We're going to roll them out here in about a month and a half to some of our education leaders in the state for some vetting. But I think the term that keeps coming to my mind is professionalization. And that's different than being a professional. Like, I can dress like a professional. But for me to be respected and treated as a professional is a mindset. And so it's a shift in the state of Oklahoma. Research suggests that teaching is not considered it's not considered as professional. It's a semi-profession. So how do we raise the perception of teaching in our communities, among our educators, our leaders, so that we really trust teachers with the responsibility for what happens in the classroom and train them to meet the needs of those students?
Well, it starts there, and to really bring this conversation full circle and really lay the groundwork on what this series is about. We've talked about where the system is and where there are certainly a lot of places for improvement. We've talked about the kind of student that we have in 2025 and beyond, support for our teachers. We see the areas for improvement. There are certainly solutions in mind and things that y'all are working at the state level on. How long will it take for us to go from 50 to wherever we would like to be? How long will that take? What are we looking at?
Yeah, well, I think right now there is a sense of urgency about this issue. And I see people from all over the state, from different parts of the economy, from whether it's government or private industry or in the education system. There is incredible interest right now in trying to fix this problem. So I'm actually very optimistic that we're going to get it done, and we're going to start to make some headway and get ourselves out of the bottom 10% of performing states. It is going to take some time, though, and it's going to take some effort and some changes, and we're going to have to put a greater focus on education. Again, that includes families, that includes people in the education system. We're going to have to place greater emphasis on education. But what I'm seeing right now, the different groups of people coalescing around this problem, I'm optimistic we're going to start to see some progress in the years to come. But it's going to take some effort. And so, in getting back to, for example, the issue with teachers, I think a lot of our legislators right now are laser focused on trying to find ways of recruiting and retaining high quality teachers. That, of course, is not easy to do. And we've actually surveyed thousands of teachers in the state to ask them, what would help to attract and recruit high quality teachers in Oklahoma? And when they're given a list of different options, whether it's a scholarship for a university degree to become a teacher, or whether it's issues with addressing student behavior or working conditions, what we see is the number one thing is compensation. So teachers identify compensation by far and away as the number one factor. So that's actually something that can be addressed at the level of policy. So now how that looks, that can take shape differently. For example, you may pay teachers more money if they're working in a high poverty rural district or working in a high poverty urban district where maybe students have greater educational needs. So you may have a policy in place where you're going to pay teachers more money to work in a place where they've got to work a little bit more to get students to grow. So there's different ways of kind of thinking about that and addressing this problem. But I'm very optimistic because I see everyone getting together and working on this right now.
Well, it's something that people care a lot about. They should care a lot about it, and why education matters we've just had a full conversation about why it matters to the state, but getting somebody at home to care, I think it's as simple as, oh, our future depends on it. Yes. And if our students, our children, we owe it to them to be able to give them the very best. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find a parent who doesn't feel that way. But the change, it's not an overnight thing. And I think that's one thing, that conversation that we have with our viewers of, well, why isn't it happening right now? We want this to happen yesterday. And of course we do, but it's not an overnight thing, and it will take some time. And again, it will take everybody coming to the table and really wanting to make meaningful change. Yes. And there is reason to hope based off of talking to y'all. So that's encouraging. And there's reason to be encouraged, yes?
Absolutely. And I think the more we work together to address a problem that we all know exists, the more quickly and efficiently we can address the problem. A lot of individuals refer to what happened in Mississippi and their success in raising their literacy scores. Mm-hmm. One of the challenges is it took Mississippi about 10 years to receive those outcomes. We don't have 10 years. That's a generation of students. So we do it. You're exactly right. Your question is right on target. It's something that we need to do immediately. And it's going to take a collaborative effort, not siloing people or alienating people, but bringing people together to work on this common challenge that we all have.
And it's an important one. Dr. Curry, Dr. Hamlin, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate everybody here at home for watching. You can catch every Beyond the Bell episode right here on our YouTube channel, and we can't wait to see you next month.
Thank you for watching this Oklahoma's own digital studio stream. Stay with News on 6 online and on television anytime for the latest news, weather, and sports.